What's up, guys? It's Josh from Cardfight Empire. It's been a long time since I made a video on my channel. I'm trying to get back into the habit of doing things regarding my content creation, stuff like that. I had a whole kind of game plan for that, but it appears back a little earlier than usual to do a deck profile. I went to the PPG and North Carolina in Concord, North Carolina this weekend. I was able to place second, so I did promise some people that I would do a deck profile. So here I am doing the deck profile, even though I am super out of practice and it's been a long time. But I was able to win this beautiful Omni. You guys can kind of see that a little bit more. The lighting is really bad. It's really late, but I am going to record a deck profile here and kind of talk about my matchups and talk about the tournament. So first, going into the tournament, um, it was run by PPG. I think PBG has been doing a really, really, really good job of running tournaments here as of late. They obviously hosted nationals, and there is like very few hiccups with that. I mean, people will say what they will, but I think that out of everyone in the organizers doing it right now, they are definitely one of the organizers doing a better job at hosting regionals, ultimate cups, that kind of thing. So the event was really, really well run. We actually didn't have any hiccups at all that I can think of during the Concord, North Carolina Regional, and they were running three tournaments side by side the whole day. They were running the Digimon tournament, they were running Dragon Ball Fusion World, I think that's what the new game is called, and then they were also running Dragon Ball Super Masters, which is basically the old Dragon Ball Super card game. But yeah, the event was super well run. I do want to talk about my opponents and my matchups really quick before I get into the last part of the video, which is going to be my deck profile. So I actually am going to be looking down a lot because I'm going to be referring to my phone. So sorry about that with the eye contact or whatever. Um, but yeah, so we started, round one, everything went super smooth. Round one, I was at table 47 with Roberto DeLuca. Also, to my opponent, sorry if I'm murdering any of you guys' names. I don't really know. I didn't really ask how to pronounce your real full name, so just the way that I took screenshots and stuff like that. But I was playing against Roberto DeLuca. He was playing Heavy Leomon. Unfortunately for Roberto, Heavy Leo just has a really, really tough matchup into, especially the version that he was playing, because he was playing a version with Leopard Mons and Leopard X's and stuff like that. And so obviously that's a lot of playing Digimon by effects. And so it kind of the way that the games win is I just would find Biting Crush and then use Biting Crush one time, and it just becomes really hard for him to do anything because I delete him. Let's say that I delete a Heavy Leo, he brings it back with Fortitude. That then triggers my Biting Crush to be able to play my Levia back from trash, now killing his Heavy Leo again. And because he devolves and puts a 6,000 DP to bottom, like there's no targets for that. So it kind of was just a breeze, but it was just matchup dependent. Wasn't my opponent's fault at all. Um, Regardless, was still really, really nice opponent. Really, really kind. He was talking to me about, how he just moved cross country from California to Virginia, I think it was, with his dad. It was like a week and a half drive. I was telling him I could never do that. But regardless, thank you, Roberto DeLuca. It was great playing against you. Um, Game two or round two, I was at table 28 with Adam Gringo. This is actually one of my favorite opponents throughout the day. Me and Adam actually played each other in the North Carolina regional that was like a year ago from like a year ago in North Carolina, also hosted by PPG. So that was the first time that we met. I was playing Blue Flare. I believe he was playing War Greymon. He was also on War Greymon again this time. Obviously, War Greymon has a kind of bad interaction with Levia because of Levia's dual pop, attempt to pop both at the same time. In game one, he did make a stack with Greymon X, and I was able to immediately following that build a Levia stack, and then I just chomped the Greymon from both sides, kind of ate it, and then I was able to win the game after that, just doing, regular swings, 13K, two checks. I think an option came down. I Levia X'd from trash, and then kind of just did more shenanigans, and then game one just became really hard after he lost that first stack. Um, Now, for game two, he actually did have me on the ropes. He was able to build an entire War Greymon stack, and he was playing the BT1 War Grey that basically negates options. So I remember he swung into my security for five checks because he had a red tie, he did the Metal Greymon X anybody, he had a Greymon Inherit, and then he also was on the War Grey from BT1. So that's four extra checks that it's giving it. He swung at my security for 16K, five checks, no options, and I believe my security was Biting Crush, Seventh Lightning, Purple Mim Boost, training, and like none of them activated because of the negation of the BT1 War Gray. And so immediately following that, I was kind of just like sweating. I was like, oh my gosh, if he has, Blitz Omni, like that's just game. He unfortunately did not have the Blitz Omni, and he just passed by, I believe, playing a Agumon or something like that. Next turn, I was able to capitalize, and I think I just hard played Olivia, or I hard played I either hard played Olivia, or I had a Biting Crush on board already, and I played Octomon or Drago. I think like I said, it's really late, and it's really hard for me to remember. If any of my opponents comment, a correct situation, and me facing them, completely open to that. But I believe after that, I just kind of adjust his board by like hard playing another Levy or something like that, because I knew that like Wargrey doesn't gain Rush. There's no way that like a Greymon deck in this current format can gain Rush. So I knew by clearing his board, I would be safe from that, and then I was also able to get some swings in at the same time, and then I was able to win the game because in game two he just didn't have like anything. I think he bricked. Um, so that was unfortunate, but nonetheless, good matches, great opponent. If you guys ever run into him, be able to say hi. He does commissions for artwork for Digimon Playmat. So definitely look him up, hit him up if you guys want commissioned art. And yeah, round three. Round three, I was supposed to be playing against a guy named Ivan Roca. I never saw Ivan Roca, and that's because they chose for our game to be the game that got played on stream. Now, I believe this was after, watching a little bit of the stream back on my ride back. I believe this was because Tyler and Wyatt were the ones doing the stream, and they wanted to see a Levia X match. So I know that like that's kind of the reason why I was chosen. I might be wrong on that, but I think that's what happened. And so I was chosen to, even though I was like table 16, I was chosen to be the stream game that round. And so the judges kind of came over, told me to pack up all my stuff and go to the stage so that I could be on stream. And I went and packed up all my stuff and I went to the stage, and my opponent was just nowhere to be found. Which was super weird. Like everybody was like looking for him, and I was just like hoping that something didn't happen to him. I was starting to feel bad. Um, and yeah, I mean, he never showed up, so I just got the free win on stream. They moved somebody else's full setup while they were playing onto the stream so that they could have a game to stream for the round. And then, to my knowledge, my opponent came back later and was like very upset with the judges for him not being there because I guess he left the venue and didn't really like. He was saying that the app that the Best Coast pairings wasn't showing him, that we were properly in round three, so that's why he hadn't come back yet, or I don't really know where he went, but yeah, I never met him, so I just got a free win randomly when I was 2-0 already. Round four, I played against Richard Dooley, another one of my favorite opponents. This guy was the Mirage player that I played on stream. I was actually on stream again in round four. They just like brought it back and were like, "Hey, you're on stream again." So I actually was playing against Richard Dooley. He was playing Mirage. This is probably like my toughest toughest matchup from of the day, hands down. It is so hard. I feel like for Levia to fight Mirage and like get an upper hand unless I hit like a biting crush out of security. Our games were kind of back and forth. He was hitting some very, very good full moon meteor impacts out of security. One of which shut me out of the game completely in game one. Like I just had no chance. And then games two and three, I was able to clutch it very narrowly. So he played very, very well. He did inform me that it was like his first time doing like a regional event. So he did super well. And so I was just like, wow, incredible player. Like he's definitely going to be like a big threat in the future. Um, and yeah, I really enjoyed playing him. He was really nice. I think all my opponents were really, really nice throughout the day, or either like really nice or just like chill, or stoic. So I didn't have any like mean opponents or opponents that I had to like argue with or fight with or anything like that. So it was really, really good overall. Round five, I fought against Wes Matthews, who I believe was playing Shine. I might be getting him confused. No, no, I'm not getting him confused. This was my Shine opponent. Unfortunately, Shine is just a really, really, really bad matchup. Um, or sorry, unfortunately, Levia is a really bad matchup for Shine. I kind of just built Levia stacks in both games one and two, and then I would swing on security, and if I hit a Marcus, Digivolve into Levia X, immediately destroy that Marcus, and then keep going about my business. Um, Unfortunately, it's just, and then he did brick in game two as well. Typical, Shine things. But he did let me know that he's from New York, so shout out to the people from New York. That Wes is from there. He did very, very well. At least, up until the point of me. I don't really know what happened after that, but I assume he did really, really well because he was a really good player. And he was basically explaining that he brought Shine because he felt like Shine would do well into everything but Levia, and that people weren't really playing Levia, which actually really fits well into the reason that I played Levia, because I played Levia because people were moving away from Levia, and I felt like people might still be on things that Levia shut out of the format, because people were starting to move to Nume, the blue hybrid Gabu deck, the red hybrid, all these decks that kind of um, beat up Levia or are a tough time for Levia, pushed Levia kind of to the back burner of the format, and so that's why I decided to bring it to this event. Round six, I fought against Mason Klessel. I'm sorry for if I murdered that name. This was my security control opponent. Now I wanted to. I know everyone's, fuck security control, blah blah blah, like yada yada, like, we hate security control. I know. I hear you. I hear you. Um, I am a person that doesn't really mind sitting across the table from security control, but I think that comes from me having played since the start of the game and really like seeing security control develop over time, and like everyone who was kind of around at the beginning of the game, like, when it was called McDonald's control, red yellow control, you kind of learned how to play against it like very early on. And so even now, like I realize that in any deck that I play, there's probably outs to playing against my security control opponent. You just have to kind of be patient and wait for your out. In my specific case, playing Levia, like my out is to destroy the Digimon that they have with Biting Crush, and then I'm able to, once I have like multiple Biting Crushes on board, I can force them to play a Digimon, and then I can just spit out multiple Levias and Levia X's, and it's really, really hard for the Secon player to like address that from there. They can only like address one threat before ending turn. So in the first game, I wasn't able to find a level 5. I literally had like level 6s for days in my hand. I had level 3s, I had level 4s in my hand for days. Literally just never found a level 5. And that was what caused it ultimately for me to just go too slow, to not find my biting crushes, to kind of do my thing. And he was like poking me, and then he poked me until I died. Game two, I was able to end it super quick. I got my trash set up. I did everything that I needed to do. I think I like double biting crushed, and then I made double Levia with double Levia X, popping two of his tamers, and then I was able to just swing through for a lot of checks to game. We actually started game three when we were on like 3 minutes on the clock as far as timer. There was a lot of people watching our match, and I just couldn't close it out, and neither could he. But I was also telling him that I really respected him as a security control player, because after he won game one, like all he had to do was slow play. and he chose actively not to do that, and that is the part that I really really respected from him. And he just kind of was like, like I like that because I'm not that kind of person, and so I like people like that are kind of trying to change the narrative. Like, sure, security control still pisses people off, but it also is a it's one of those things where if you're not just stalling with security control, I feel like, I don't mind you playing it because it is a real deck. You are trying to kill your opponent. You're just a little bit slower than other decks because of all the other, cards that you run in your list. But then the final round, which was round seven, I actually played against Ryan Smith. Both him and the previous security control player that I played against were actually friends, and they were from Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. So shout out Ohio people. But Ryan was actually playing Devas. This was one of my tougher matchups of the day as well, because game one he made it Fang Long super quick, and I was just thinking in my head, and I was like, okay, if I Biting Crush his level 5, his level 5s cost 7, my Biting Crush costs 8, so I'll be leaving him at 1 more and it'll be fine, and blah blah blah. I don't know what I was rationalizing in my head. I was like, okay, if he plays Fang Long off the option, I can trigger Biting Crush and play my 2 Levias, even though they won't destroy them. I'll have enough advantage to kind of swing through for game next turn. Well, as I was thinking that thought process through after I played the Biting Crush, I was like, oh, this is useless because once he plays Fang, he's got a minus 16,000 on my board, and then I just can't play my Levia. So it is just one of those scenarios where I scooped game one, and then I just did game two and three, and I just tried to rush him down as fast as possible to try to avoid the Fang Long coming down, knowing that I couldn't address it. So yeah, I was able to barely clutch it out against Ryan, and that's what landed me second. We would have had an additional round, but because me and the security control player tied, it went on to just being, just the undefeateds that were left, which were Primitive, TCG, and Juan, which was from my locals. But yeah, that has been me explaining my matchups, explaining kind of how the games went. Shout out to all my opponents; they were all great. They all, gave conversation. Like, we all had a good time, I feel. Alright guys, so we're going to get right into the deck profile part of the video. Like I said, I was playing Levia in the North Carolina Concord PPG Regional that I got second place at. So we're going to go over the deck profile, and I'm going to explain my options, my tech cards, kind of things that happen throughout the day. I should have another part of the video where I'm explaining my matchups and how things helped there, so you guys should be able to refer back there as well. But yeah, let's get started. So starting with my eggs, we played 4 BT6 06 Sunomon. So Sunomon is, in my opinion, one of the best eggs that you can run for the deck. Sunomon's inheritable basically says whenever you trash a card from your hand using one of your effects, you're able to trigger a draw one, meaning that there's a multitude of cards in this deck that draw one, discard one, or just make you discard one to use an effect, meaning that you can always either break even or plus one using Sunomon at least once per turn, and that allows you a very, very good form of draw power in the deck. So we're going to go from the top down just because I think it's easiest to explain it that way. So we ran one Shine Greymon Ruin Mode as our top end. Shine Greymon Ruin Mode is really just not even, an ace card of the deck, and I don't mean like ace ace mechanic, but obviously, but you have your cards that are kind of like your trump cards, and I won't say that Shine Greymon Ruin Mode is a trump card so much as it is a deterrent for certain decks in the meta, or if you can prevent your opponent from coming back from what you've already done to them during the turn by just digivolving it over a Levia X or a Leviamon. It allows you to, when digivolving on deletion until the end of your opponent's turn, all of their Digimon get minus 5,000 DP. So it places a blanket effect on their board, and if you are new to card games and don't know what blanket means, it basically just means that it is a stagnant lingering effect, meaning that like this is an effect that will be staying on your opponent even though it is no longer our turn. So with it giving minus 5,000 DP, that kills most champions and most rookies. So if your opponent has a card in their breeding area that is 5,000 DP or less, by effectively digivolving into this, you effectively tell your opponent that they cannot raise their card that they have in the back up, or it will instantly die. That really, really helps against a lot of different decks, a lot of different strategies. It locks a lot of decks out of the game. As well, they can't hard play anything that has 5,000 or less because it will just die. They also can't get on plays from anything that they on play because they on play it. The game checks to see if it would die, and it would die before it gets its on play. So Shine Greymon Room Node super good. Also has another effect that says end of attack, delete this Digimon, and then you can delete one of your opponent's Digimon, and then you can recover one, and if you have a tamer, then you can hatch a new Digi-Egg. Now, obviously, the part where it talks about hatching a new Digi-Egg if you have a tamer is not relevant in this deck because this Levia build doesn't run tamers. I think most Levia builds do not run tamers just because it's easier to kind of get some of your effects off if you do not run tamers, and we'll go over that and you'll understand more why if you've never played this deck before. But basically, we just use the Shine Gray Ruin mode to lock people out of the game because most of the time when we're going into this, it means that I've cleared my opponent's entire security and I'm just trying to put another thing between me and them doing anything back before I can close out the game. So our next cards will be our grade, or not grade, sorry. Ex Vanguard players know what I mean, but will be our level sixes. So we played 4 Leviamon and 3 Leviamon X, or Leviamon, however you would like to pronounce it. I say it both ways, literally all the time. Um, but these are basically our level sixes, and they are the center of the entire deck. There are so many things that lead into both of these two Digimon that these two Digimon are what make the centerfold of the entire deck. So we'll start with Levia because it's kind of easier to start there. This card came out first, and it also leads into Levia X, so we'll talk about that after. But basically, Leviamon, or Leviamon, if you will, has security attack +1. It is 13k DP level 6 Digimon, meaning that it is real big. There are not many things in the game that are bigger than 13k or even match 13k. So if you attack your opponent's security with a 13k 2-check Digimon, it means that most of the time your attacks are going to go through. This card is going to survive most of the time. Especially because it can't be affected by, or I mean, it can be affected by these things, but it is less likely to be destroyed by DP reduction because it is 13k. It can't be de-digivolved in this deck really because a lot of times when you have this card on board, you just have it by itself with no stack underneath it. It will literally just be just like this on the mat. So it is really hard for your opponent to kind of effectively deal with this, especially if they're playing like security control or something like that. There are ways that you can just cheat this out for free, and we'll talk about those kind of later on in my deck profile. But it also has an on-play when digivolving effect that says if your opponent has as many or more total Digimon and Tamers as you, then you can delete one of your opponent's highest Digimon, and then you delete one of your opponent's lowest level Digimon. So let's kind of break that down. A lot of people are confused about how this works. So Leviamon, when it comes into play, when digivolving or when attacking, let's say that your opponent has a Leviamon and they have a Tamer, right? Let's just say that this Levia is a Tamer for, sakes. So that means that you count the total number of your Digimon and Tamers. So if I don't have any Tamers and I just have this Leviamon, then I have 1, my opponent has a Digimon and a Tamer, so they have 2. So if Leviamon sees that my opponent has equal to or more than me, then I delete the highest level Digimon, and then I delete the lowest level Digimon. However, let's say that I am the one with the Tamer. Obviously, will never be the case because I don't run Tamers, but if I am the one with the Tamer, then when I digivolve into Leviamon or hard play Leviamon, I will have 2 and my opponent has 1. So this means that I would not get to pop the highest level Digimon, but I still do get the second part of the skill to pop the lowest level Digimon. So that's very important to know as I begin to talk about plays and stuff like that, because there are some matchups where that really does still matter. This also means that when you digivolve into this card, you will be popping the lowest level Digimon on their board no matter what, and this is really, really, really good because it allows you to just pop single stack Digimon. It is the sole reason why this deck can kind of do anything against Mirage, because if you have so much draw power in this deck that most of the time, if you do anything and they have the BT11 Mirage on the board, you're passing turn because of the insane memory gain that they'll gain from that. Unless you have Ghazi on board, then you don't really care about it. But a lot of times you will not have Ghazi on board because they will have bounced it or removed it in some other way. So a lot of times you just build up your stack and raising, and then you come out and you Digivolve into Leviamon, and Leviamon will instantly kill the Mirage. So that is kind of like your best way to deal with that. Also, it has an alternate effect that says when an opponent's Digimon is deleted, gain 1 memory for each Digimon deleted. Meaning that basically whenever one of your opponent's Digimon dies, you gain 1 memory. So this can be super very good for like aggro rush strategies as well, because once you get a Leviamon set up on board, if your opponent is trying to swing into your security to kill themselves, or they're just trying to rush you down or whatever, they're actually actively losing memory every single time that one of their Digimon gets deleted. This also helps you maintain turn when you're Digivolving into it. So even though it Digivolves for 5, if it kills something, it Digivolves for 4. If it kills 2 things, it effectively Digivolves for 3. So this card can net you a lot of advantage really, really fast, and it's a very powerful card. Now we can talk about Levia X. Levia X actually has a special Digivolution, which means that it's an X antibody. So like most X antibodies in the game, it can Digivolve over the regular form of itself for some cost. So Levia X can actually Digivolve over Leviamon for 2, for the cost of 2. So you'd be moving your memory marker by 2. But when Digivolving, it basically kills a level 3, a level 5, and a level 7. And then before that, if you know, the same thing that we were talking about before with Levia, you count the amount of Tamers and Digimon on your board, count the amount of Tamers and Digimon on your opponent's board, and then you are actually able to, if they have equal or more than you, then you're able to pop one of their Tamers, and then immediately following that, you get to destroy a level 3 Digimon, a level 5 Digimon, and a level 7 simultaneously, all at the same time. Now, the thing that makes this card really, really good is actually its first trash effect. So its trash effect says when an effect plays and Digimon, an opponent's Digimon or Tamer, one of your Leviamon or any Digimon with X antibody in his Digivolution cards can Digivolve into this card without paying the cost. Now, obviously, you would need a level 5 to meet the requirement still, because it still does need to Digivolve over a level 5 or a Leviamon. But this says that the Leviamon has to have X antibody in the stack to use its trash effect. Now, you still can hold this card in your hand in some matchups and still just regularly Digivolve into it. I actually really like Digivolving into it sometimes with either Wisdom Training or X Antibody Protoform. Both of these reduce the cost of evolution into Levia X, so it can make it very, very good, while also at the same time, you know, if you're going into Protoform, giving you like a little bit of recursion and also a security. So you're basically healing one, quote unquote, when this card goes down or gets tries to get removed from the field in any way, which is really, really good. In some matchups, it just means that you're just literally recovering all the time, and your opponent has to punch through that still if they would like to kill you or have any chance of, you know, kind of reducing you down. Now, lastly, this card has attack plus 2, so it is a step up from Levia, whereas Leviamon or Leviamon has sec plus 1. This card has sec plus 2, meaning that it takes 3 checks from your opponent, 3 life, 3 damage, you know, whatever you would like to call it, 3 security. Takes 3 from your opponent instead of 2, and since it's 14k, it is very, very, very unlikely that it is going to die. So very, very good. Now, obviously, we just explained the 2 kind of best trump cards in the deck, so everything else after this substantiates or tries to support what we're trying to do with our top end, right? So we're going to go for our level 5s. We have 3 Cerberusmon X Antibody, 2 Dragomon, and 2 Warseedramon. Right, so I'm going to kind of explain the play with this. My thinking when I wanted to play this deck was that either most Levia decks that I have seen only play 2 of the 3 of these level 5s. They either try to go heavy 4-4 or like a 4-3 split or something like that. I decided that I was going to run 7 5s, and so I decided that I think it's best to run all 3. I tried to kind of I tried to kind of make my Levia build a combination of all of the best things that I had seen of Levia while trying to take away some of the shortcomings. And so one of the shortcomings that I found, at least, was that if you are only running two of the three of these, instead of running all three, you will fall short somewhere. Now, Cerberus X, you will kind of fall short when you need to kill an opponent that is just healing a lot and you need multiple checks with Levia X, swing three checks, restand, swing three checks. That is something that you can only do when you have Cerberus X Antibody. Cerberus X Antibody also allows you to play a level 3 from your trash. So our level 3 toolbox that you guys will see later in the deck becomes completely available to us because we run Cerberus X. Now Dragomon allows us to, basically have our opponent play a Digimon on play when digivolving. They play level 4 lower from their trash suspended. They don't get any on play effects from that. And then its all turn effect allows us to play the same level that they played or lower. So it allows us to, call our Floodgate, Gazi. You have different things, Rush Gilmon. You have Gizamon to kind of substantiate, your turn and make things that you delete your opponent. You'll get more advantage from it. Now, and then also you have Worosidra. Now, the reason that you have Worosidra as opposed to Drago is if you only have, let's say that you only have Cerberus X and Drago in your deck. If your opponent plays a Floodgate like Pillowmon, any of the Floodgates that say that you can't play Digimon by effects, you effectively have no way to get rid of that Floodgate unless you shove an X Antibody, a regular one, underneath Dragomon, and then you make them play the Floodgate, and then you go into Levia X. But that is not, exactly ideal or what you always want to do or what you always can do because that will require having, the regular X antibody in your hand, which we don't always want to rely on. So you want to give yourself multiple ways, multiple outs to get out of situations, as well as respond to what your opponent actually is doing when you're playing them. So let's kind of go over all my fives again. So essentially, explaining Cerberus X in full, it does on play a purple level 3 Digimon from our trash without paying the cost. When Digivolving, you can draw one, discard one, and then if this card has X Antibody or a Cerberus spawn inside of its sources, then you can activate the on play effect, which is to play level 3. So a lot of times your move with this is to use X Antibody Protoform or shove the regular X Antibody underneath it, but it works best with X Antibody Protoform because this is going to reduce the cost of your evolution by 1. So using X Antibody Protoform to digivolve into this means that you can digivolve for 2, you can draw 1, discard 1, and then you can play level 3 from your trash. So really, really good combo, allows you to open up a whole world of plays, and then its inheritable is actually what allows us to get through that, that pesky deck that is just trying to live and do nothing else but live, yellow, setcon, different things like that, and it allows you to actually push a lot of aggression when you need to. So the inheritable is when attacking by deleting one of your other Digimon, unsuspend this Digimon. So the reason why this is so good is because guess what? Cerberus X plays you a Digimon, so you will already have a Digimon to trigger that effect. You just need to be able to go into Levia or Levia X and maintain turn so that you can swing. So not a lot of insane you know requirements or anything like that you need to get that going. But at the same time, it is really, really, really good. Dragomon and Worosidra both have an inheritable piercing effect, which means that these cards are kind of the same. However, the main reason why you're running Worosidra as opposed to just running Dragomon is the same floodgate situation that we were talking about before. So let's say that you swing with a Dragomon, you swing with a Worosidramon. Worosidраmon's effect is first, when attacking, your opponent plays a level 4 or lower from their trash suspended, no on plays, so it does the same thing as Drago's on play when digivolving. However, it has an all turns effect at the top that says when an effect plays a opponent's Digimon until the end of the turn, all of their Digimon get on deletion, lose 1 memory, meaning that it places a blanket on their board. Another, blanket effect that we were talking about earlier, if you remember, is the Shine Gray Ruin mode. So places another blanket type effect on their board, which is basically a lingering effect for those of you guys who are new to Digimon. But basically, places a lingering effect on your opponent's board that they're going to lose one memory every single time that something is deleted. So this even follows into your opponent's turn. So sometimes your opponent kind of forgets about it. There was like different times where I would put my opponent to one memory, and then they would move up with a rookie that, and their deck is just, wants that rookie to die. And if they swing with that rookie and it dies, and I have both a Leviamon on board and I did War of Seedra last turn, it means that when that Digimon dies, they're going to lose two memory and they're going to inadvertently pass turn to me. And a lot of people just, there are like a lot of triggers that happen when you play this deck. And so when your opponent is sitting across from you while you're playing Levia, there are a lot of things that they need to consider and a lot of things that they need to like keep in mind, especially in a competitive setting such as a regional where I don't have to, I have to tell them when I activate my effects, but I don't have to tell them going into their turn like what they should be remembering and what they shouldn't. So, that is something that, both playing this deck and playing against this deck, that is something that both players should, try their best to remember every single thing that is in play. However, the World Seedramon thing that we were talking about as far as, the floodgates, is that if you swing with War Seedra and the card that they play is their floodgate, War Seedra's effect actually allows you to redirect your attack into that floodgate. So you can either redirect into that floodgate as well as Digivolve into your Levia X from trash, as long as this has an X antibody under it, which basically both of these, because they're not X antibody cards, require the regular X antibody. And then cards like Cerberus X can use Protoform because this can only help you Digivolve into X Antibody Digimon. So that is why we are running both X Antibody, the regular, and the Protoform, because we were trying to run like a mixed build. I've seen some builds only run Protoform. I've seen some builds only run regular X Antibody, and I personally believe that that is wrong and will leave you between a rock and a hard place when it comes to some of your matchups. But War Seedra can basically redirect into the Floodgate. You can Digivolve into Levia in the best case scenario. Now, sometimes you don't need to, because if they play that Floodgate and that Floodgate is level 3, unless they have another level 3 on board, Digivolving into Levia X is automatically going to kill that Floodgate, which means that your attack is going to fizzle out. That's not exactly what you want. So a lot of times when I would go into Levia X, you can actually choose, if you're going to go into it or not. So I would swing with War Seedra. If they play their floodgate's got to die to my attack unless they have an ace card, which is kind of be, wary of what their board actually is, so that you can be aware if you're, giving them access to an ace card or not. Because sometimes you can swing with War Seedra, and then because you're already when attacking, this can be worse against stuff like blue, because they'll play a level 4, and then immediately after that they'll go into Zudo Ace, or they'll go into one of their ace cards off of that. So that's not what you want. So you want to be very, very careful, like I said, which one of the, level 5s that you are using to kind of facilitate your gameplay. Moving on, we have our level 4s. So we played 4 Doberman X Antibody, 2 Raremons, 2 Octomons, and 1 Garurumon. Now, I know this 4 lineup is going to look interesting to a lot of people, and there's actually so much that I want to say about it. First, these Raremons. I will give shout out to the end of this video, but shout out to Thomas and Hunter for helping me get the Raremon that I need to play in this event, because I was looking for a second Raremon for I don't know how long, asking I don't know how many people. No one had this card. I only owned one myself, and it was just like impossible to find. However, when I was testing, obviously a lot of people know that you usually play Garurumon X Antibody in this deck, which is currently a card that is seen as so good that it is limited to 1 right now. Now, I chose to cut what would be my Garurumon X Antibody for a second Raremon. Raremon is, in this deck, just super incredible. Does a lot of things for the deck, and there's so many like things that Raremon changes for the deck that I actually believe that playing this deck without Raremon is kind of weird. Unless you just don't have access to it. But it does improve the game plan of this deck a whole lot. It does improve all your interactions a whole lot. And I will kind of go into some of the combos that you can do with the Raremon in your deck as opposed to the Garurumon X. But let's talk about all of our 4s here. So first we have Dober X, obviously running it at 4 because this is most of the time the level 4 that you want to Digivolve into. we don't play regular Dober, so obviously all of, the only way to get its full range of effects is if you go into, Dober while it has X antibody underneath it already, or use Protoform to go into Dober. Now, a lot of times we use Protoform to go into Dober, knowing that if our opponent pokes us, we're going to get our Protoform back from security, allowing us to Digivolve another turn into another Dober X or into another X antibody card, whether it's Levia X, Cerberusmon X, stuff like that. So it allows us to on play, you can give one of your Digimon retaliation. You should never be on playing this card unless unless you Dragomon and your opponent plays a level 4, and then you chose to play Dober for whatever reason. But there's so many ways that you can just make other better plays that you shouldn't ever be using this on play effect. But the reason the on play effect is relevant is that it's just like Cerberus X, where if it has X antibody under it, you can actually activate the on play of the Digimon after drawing one and discarding a card. So it actually will give one of your Digimon Retal just from you with Digivolving into this with an X antibody under it or an X antibody protoform that you just placed underneath it. So it can become really good, give itself Retal, swing into some of those bigger threats of your opponent. I don't often do that. I'm going to be really honest with you guys. I didn't use the Retal on this card a single time in this whole event. Um, and it's just really one of those things where, like, I mean, it could be a deterrent for your opponent, like, so that they don't swing into, your stack that you build up because it does have Retail. But honestly, at the end of the day, this deck does such a good job at, like, removing things on your opponent's board without you having to use the retaliation mechanic that you just do that. It's inheritable also is when the effect plays one of your Digimon, gain one memory. That's the exact opposite of Octomon's inheritable, which is when the effect plays an opponent's Digimon, gain one memory. And this one is all turns, meaning that if you have Octomon underneath a stack, if your opponent, is playing a deck that plays Digimons by effect, or they, try to, swarm the board or anything like that, Octomon is kind of one of your best bets as your inheritables because you will be gaining memory. At least you'll gain one memory a turn when they try to play Digimon by effect. Also, Octomon allows you to give them a Digimon in the form of a Fujitsumon token. So basically, Octomon's on play when Digivolving is once it comes into play, either when Digivolving or on play from your hand, it basically counts the amount of Digimon on board. Now, if there's 4 or total Digimon on board, including you and your opponents, then you get a Fujitsumon token to your side of the board suspended. Now, if there are 3 or less Digimon on board, you place the Fujitsumon token on your opponent's board suspended, and the Fujitsumon is 3000 DP, doesn't have a level, and it basically has an on deletion that says that, whoever the owner of the Fujitsu token was, discards one card. So it's actually pretty good because there's a lot of situations where I Digivolved into Octomon in the early game, made them play a token, and then swing over the token just to make them discard a card. And that makes a lot of decks uncomfortable because if their hand is already bricky, or if they need every piece in their hand to get their combo, then you make sure that they discard cards, and it becomes to your benefit. Now, the one Garurumon, I was literally just running to kind of be a fifth version of Dober X as far as the win Digivolving, draw one, trash one. There wasn't really a reason for using it beyond that, except for the fact that we do play one Gabumon X Antibody. So there were some matchups where I would go into Gabumon X Antibody and Raising, and then move up and go into the Garurumon, and because I don't need to facilitate a swing with my level 5 or my level 6 that turn, I can just swing Garurumon into security, and then this is what's going to allow my Gabumon, if my Garuru would die, because 5 is a pretty low number, right? You're dying to most champions, you're dying to ultimates, you're dying to megas, you're dying to, you know, anything bigger than 5, which is a lot of things in this game and a lot of things in this format. So if you're just poking for 5, you're poking A, knowing that you're safe from battle, but you want to actually get this effect triggered. So you want to, hit something that is higher than 5k. So that way you can use Gabumon X Anybody's inherited effect to return 2 cards, any 2 cards from your trash to the bottom of your deck. So it can be really, really good for recursion, and that is kind of why we're playing the one Garurumon X. It does have an inheritable as well that says when attacking, draw one, trash one. That's kind of negligible, but I mean, it does help you filter out your hand, get certain key pieces in the trash so that you can use your Leviamons, your 7th Lightnings, your your Levia X's, along with Biting Crush, that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, it's just really, really good. Now, talking about the best four in the deck, probably, I would say it's pretty close in the running for best four in this deck with Dober X. Dober X has so much utility for this deck, but so does Raremon. So first, we're going to talk about the fact that Raremon costs 4 to play. I can't elaborate or explain enough how important it is that this card is such low cost on play. This card digivolves for 3, but it plays for 4, meaning that a lot of times you can just play it. We do run Goblimon in our deck. As one of our premier grade 3s, or sorry, premier level 3s that we will digivolve into in our raising, and will be in our stack. So if I have a stack that has Goblimon in it, and I decide to play Raremon from my hand, Raremon effectively will play for 3 unless they have a memory blocker, because I will discard 1, draw 2, and then Goblimon's Inheritable, when one of your effects trashes a card in your hand, gain a memory, will trigger, and then you will effectively be playing a Raremon for 3, which is so good. The only other level 4s that you can play in this game for 3 are vanillas, pretty much. And they make them vanillas because you're playing them for 3. So being able to play a level 4 with an effect that gives you great utility for 4, aka sometimes 3 or sometimes even 2 if you have other Gobbly inheritables on board, stuff like that, can be really, 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 really good. Now, digivolving to this isn't bad either. A lot of times we will, use a wisdom training alongside digivolving into it so that we can digivolve for 1. If you use a wisdom training to digivolve into Raremon over Gobbly, it's essentially free because you will digivolve for 1, you'll trash a card, you'll draw 2, and then Gobbly will gain a memory. So it's actually not bad at all to have to just raw digivolve into it, and it can be really, really good for your stacks, and I will explain why right now. So essentially, earlier when we were talking about the level 5s, right? When we were talking about the level 5s and we're talking about cards like War Seedramon, and we're talking about Floodgates, right, for your opponent. So this is what will allow you to kind of break through that pesky strategy that your opponent has of playing Floodgates. And here's why. This really helped a lot in my security control matchup that I played in the day. Because you will swing with War Seedramon, you will have 2 when attackings that are triggering, so you will also have your alterns that will trigger after that as well. So you can basically use, let's say that I have a War Seedramon, and I have a Biting Crush down here, and I have a Leviamon in my trash, right? And I also have a Levia X in my trash. This combo alone will prevent your opponent from outing you because you can swing with War Seedramon, trigger War Seedramons when attacking first to make them play a Digimon. You're going to want to, obviously they're going to play their Floodgate if they have one, but then you're going to want to declare the first part of War Seedra after that because it's important in a competitive event that you declare that, because other than that, before you declare it, it's actually not going into effect. That this happened to me on stream during the tournament around round 4. We were kind of talking about this because basically I made a swing, I declared the when attacking effect, and then I proceeded to do other effects so that I didn't get my War Seedra because I didn't declare that the effect was in play, the blanket effect. So you want to basically swing when your opponent plays the Digimon, declare the blanket effect, and then Raremon's Inheritable is to discard a card to delete one of my opponent's level 3 Digimon. Now all the floodgates in the game are level 3s, so if your opponent plays a level 3, then you're able to go, boom, I'll just discard a card from my hand, kill that floodgate, and now my other effects that were triggering at the same time, Biting Crush, Levia X, all of these can now be used because that floodgate is gone. So you can now pop Biting Crush to play Levia from your trash for free, and you can trigger Levia X to digivolve into Levia X and use all the effects, and you'll just be going crazy, gaining so much memory because of War Seedra plus Levia, and it's just insane. Like your opponent can't stop you anymore doing that play because you have Raremon in your deck. And that is something that it's a big enough change just for that one interaction alone that Raremon changes to make it such a good card that you have to include. And it really put in like lots and lots of work throughout the day. There was like lots of times where my opponent would put me to 3 and they would not have a memory setter, and I didn't want to move up yet, so I just played a Rareamon and dropped a Levia X and drew 2 cards, or dropped a Seventh Lightning, drew 2 cards, dropped a Leviamon, drew 2 cards. You guys kind of get what I'm saying here, but you want to basically pitch anything out that is not going to be good for your game plan, and then you're going to want to draw 2 and keep it moving. You also now have a level 4 on board, so you can go into any of your level 5s at any time, and your opponent has to respect that from you, knowing that there's a level 4 on board now. So moving into our rookies, we got 3 starter deck 16 Gabu, 3 BT14 Goblimon, 2 BT3 Gazimon, 1 EX4 Gilmon, 1 BT15 Gizamon, and 1 Gabumon X anybody from EX5. Sorry guys, super tired coming off this event. So let's talk about our rookies. Obviously our rookie package, we are running 11 rookies here. It's just enough to get the job done. You have a bunch of search, a lot of filter in this deck. The point of running so many different level 3s, especially these 3, is that they were supposed to be, kind of a toolbox to come off of our Cerberus X. So playing any of the 3 of these off Cerberus X allows you great utility depending on the situation that you're in. If you need more search, boom, Gabumon. If you need to kill your opponent and maintain turn, you want to also, add a little blanket to their Digimon, boom, Gizamon. If you want to do rush because you're trying to go aggro and swing for game after you do your checks, then boom, you have Gilmon as well. So it's just, kind of up to you and kind of up to the board state. You need to be really, really smart about which one of the 3 of these that you're going to play when you go off of your Cerberus X. You also have the ability to play Gazi. Gazi affects, a lot of decks, a lot of your worst matchups, blue. If they play Hammer Spark, if they're playing Mirage, if they're playing any blue deck, blue usually is very, very memory efficient, and they usually have a lot of memory gain effects. So having a Gazi on board can stop a lot of nonsense from going on in a lot of multiple decks. So obviously we have the Gabu. I would say our ideal ride for this deck is Gabli, but you do have Gabu as well, because Gabu as well, when you move up start of main, if your opponent has a Digimon, you gain a memory. So it is kind of like having a Gabli, but Gabli has more long-term utility and pressure, so we like going into Gobly more. But also, you could even play a Gabu off of Cerberus X's effect, and now your opponent has to address the Gabu, or you're going to gain a memory at start of turn if they have a Digimon out. So kind of just, putting that pressure on your opponent, making sure that they're constantly feeling like they need to address your board, because guess what? They're going to address your board with Digimon, most likely, and then you're going to address them back with your board wipe, abilities. So it kind of just baits your opponent into playing the way that you want them to play, and then you're able to just capitalize off of that immediately following. So Gilmon, like I said, on play, if the number of both players' trashes is equal to 20 or more, then this Digimon gains rush. So a lot of times you can do that Levia play where you swing 3 checks using the Cerberus X to unsuspend, swing 3 checks, and then just hard play Gilmon if you have enough memory for 3, and then just swing for game using rush. So there's just so many situations where this comes up. I think my favorite level 3 that I ran was definitely the Gabu X. Gabu X is currently limited to 1 right now for good reason. It was very, very consistent, very good in Guru decks, a little bit too much so that it was being used in every purple deck. But really we use, I already explained the Inheritable when I talked about Gurumon earlier, why we run it for that, but the on-play effect is also amazing for this deck, because you can on-play, you reveal the top 4 cards of your deck, and then you basically are able to grab any card with X anybody's name or Gurumon. Any 2 cards. So this basically searches so many things in our deck. This searches your Levia X's. This searches your Dober X's. This searches your Cerberus X. This searches your X antibodies. So being able to go through 4 cards and know that you're gonna probably find a hit is really, really amazing, and it really, really helps go into some of the bigger plays that you're gonna do in this deck. And then moving on to our option cards, which are actually going to be the last part of the deck because we don't run Tamers. We run 3 Biting Crush, super stable card, 2 Seventh Lightning. I'm going to try to place these out of the glare area. So 2 Seventh Lightning, 2 Purple Min Boost, 4 Wisdom Training, 2 regular X Antibody, 2 X Antibody Protoform. So obviously you guys can see that we're running a very, very heavy option lineup here. But I would say that I would not change any of these options. I wouldn't change the numbers. I wouldn't tweak or anything like that. I mean, this is like what worked for me perfectly the entire event. Let's talk about our consistency pieces first, because these, the rest of these have a little bit more like multifaceted explanations. But Purple Memory Boost and 4 Wisdom Training. Wisdom Training obviously is a little bit better for you as far as setup because you're able to grab option cards as well as Digimon. So you can grab your Biting Crushes, you can grab your 7th Lightnings, you can grab your Purple Min Boost, you can also grab a training off of a training, or you can grab any Digimon in this deck because all of these Digimon are purple. They might be dual colored, but they're also purple. So you can grab anything in the deck except for X Antibodies, X Antibody Protoforms off of Wisdom Training, meaning this is the reason that we ran it at 4. Not because of consistency, because of what it can grab, right? So obviously your Wisdom Training, if your opponent has no Floodgates on board, your Wisdom Training and your Purple Min Boost kind of effectively work the same way. Now in some cases, popping your Purple Min Boost to gain 2 memory will allow you to do things you wouldn't normally otherwise be able to do, like hard play a hard play a Leviamon from your hand. Let's say that your opponent puts you at 1 and chokes you. You have a Purple Memory Boost, you go to 3, and then you drop a Leviamon because you know that it's worth it. They have like ace cards, whatever. So in those situations, Purple Memory Boost is a little better. However, people do have, memory floodgates like Chumon, like Gazimon in their deck. So this card becomes infinitely less useful when you run across people that run that card. Also, another reason why we ran 4 trainings is because in America, in NA in general, people don't really run the floodgate that stops Digivolution cost. So your trainings just kind of go free and they're never punished, pretty much. Now let's talk about the X antibodies. I talked about these already a ton of times in the deck profile, but we have 2 of the regular X antibody, which can be shoved under any Digimon at any time as long as they do not have an X antibody underneath it already. It also cannot be trashed by your opponent's source stripping effect. So if you're playing against a deck that source strips you, like Mirage with Zudo Ace, or they're trying to bounce you, or their effect is dependent on how many sources you have versus how many sources they have. Boom, X Antibody is the card for you. Also, X Antibody, like each one of our X Antibodies mainly goes with one of our 5s. So you want to use the regular X Antibody with Dragomon and Warasidra so that you can warp into, or not warp, but you can Digivolve from trash into Levia X. Now, the X Antibody Protoform goes great with the Cerberus X. Reduces the Digivolution of an X Antibody Digimon by 1, and then shoves itself underneath and counts as X Antibody, the regular one. So it allows you to use all of those effects, those secondary effects that we were talking about of Dobermon X Antibody, Cerberusmon X Antibody. You can even do this and then go straight from a Levia into a Levia X for 1. And that sometimes can be a game-winning play in of itself right there. So just kind of keep track of like which X antibodies you have in your hand. Also, both of them out of security come back to your hand. This one just regularly comes back to your hand, and then this one gains a memory out of security and then comes to your hand. So it's important to be able to manage which X antibody cards you have on board and in your hand, and which ones are going to your security if your opponent has destroyed something with Protoform and you remember where it is in your security. Now, these last 5 options that we're going to discuss is 3 Biting Crush, 2 7th Lightning. Probably the best options, hands down, that you can run in Levia. Biting Crush is a format-defining card, in my opinion. It is super good, so we're going to talk about that first, right? Because it opens up so many things that you can do. Now, Biting Crush says main, so main means I'm playing it for 8 from my hand, right? By trashing one card in my hand, I can delete one of my opponent's level 6 or lower Digimon. That's already really, really, really good because there's lots of option cards that cost 8, cost 7, that cause you to remove a body or remove a card on board, right? So you're doing that. However, if you trashed a card with the 7 Great Demon Lords trait, which means that 7th Lightning falls into that category. Also, any of your Leviamons or your Levia X also fall into this category, right? So basically in this deck, if you're discarding 7th Lightning, Leviamon, or Levia X for Biting Crush effect, then it gets to place itself in the battle area. Now, all turns it has a delay effect, which is if your opponent plays a Digimon by effect, then you can pop this, use the delay, send it to the trash, and then you can play a Leviamon from your trash for free. Now, a lot of times the reason that this is so relevant is because then this Leviamon would activate its on-play ability, and then also that would trigger any Levia X that you have in trash as well to be able to Digivolve immediately. So it can do a lot to your opponent's board. It completely wrecks their board or whatever. But Biting Crush helps you so much against the matchups where all they do is play Digimon, or they can't help but play Digimon by effect, and so they kind of just auto lose to you. And you guys will see that when I talk about my matchups. Um, yeah. So you guys will hear about my matchups and why Biting Crush was so good. Now 7th Lightning functions as a second option to come out of security. Also, Biting Crush uses its main effect out of security. So if your opponent happens to be swinging at your security and they hit this, I think it is one of the freest ways that you can get a Biting Crush played to board, is if you hit it out of security and discard the right card. But 7th Lightning has a trash effect that says when one of your Digimon digivolves into Leviamon X anybody, you can return this card from the trash to the bottom of the deck to delete one of your opponent's level 4 and level 6s. Now, its main effect, by trashing a card, you delete one of your opponent's level 4 or 6s. Does the same exact thing, but gives you a little bit more utility in the way that you can put this from the trash to the bottom of the deck. You can prevent yourself from decking out against like security control decks that drag you on for a really, really long time. Or if you just see that you're not going to be able to use it in that meta, boom, you can play this for 7, pop their level 6, pop their level 4. So just doing things like that can just be really, really good. But that was the deck profile portion of the video. I hope you guys really, really enjoyed that. I'm going to get back to the other me that is explaining my matchups and tournament experience or closing out the video. So I hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile. Feel free to use my comment section to post any questions that you might have, anything like that about the deck, any comments, concerns, whatever. Like I said, I'm super tired coming off the event, so I might have jumbled some words or said some things that I did not mean to say. So definitely feel free to correct me or post any questions that you have in my comment section below. Thanks, guys. Back to the other Josh. And yeah, I wanted to give a couple more shout outs before I end this video. But yeah, shout out to my group that went with me. They really turned like what would have been a negative trip for me because I had some things happen and I was going to have to drive myself up to North Carolina, which was kind of unfavorable. And because of my group, I didn't have to do that. So I ended up going with a group that I played One Piece with, and then they were going for Fusion World. So it was really, really, really fun. So shout out to my group. Shout out to Juan for winning. He's actually a fellow Georgia player, so congrats to him for winning. It was like kind of like his first like big top at an event. He was like super happy, and I just loved seeing that amount of energy from him. It was a huge pop off. I loved it. I also wanted to just shout out anyone that was there supporting me. Like obviously like there was just so many things going on, and like if you guys take anything from my video, a person that's new watching this or even a person that's going through a lot in life and watching this, like if I can do it, you can do it. Like there was so much going through my head when I was like going through the event, and I was just really thankful for all the people that were like there supporting me because it was able to like I was able to like keep my head like locked in to the game in order to achieve the placing that I placed. But yeah, that was all my shout outs. I really appreciate anybody that came up to me during the event, knew me from previous events, wanted to talk to me, hadn't seen you in a long time, all that kind of stuff. You know, met at nationals, met at last year in-person regionals, played against each other online, whatever. I really appreciate everyone coming up to me. It's a super fun experience, super nice. Shout out to PPG for running the event, George and all the boys, Nate for being head judge, our other judges like Josh and um, yeah, like Josh and the other judges, they all did a great job. So shout out to everyone there. Um, but yeah, with that, I'm going to close the video. If you guys haven't already, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. As usual, I'm going to be posting more videos probably. I haven't decided what kind of Digimon content I want to do because I haven't exactly been a Digimon content creator the whole time. I've just been a player the whole time since the game came out. So I'm not sure what kind of content I want to go with going forward because I'm not much of like a tier list guy or like a market guy or anything like that. But we'll figure it out as we go along. I hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile. I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace, guys.